What's up, guys? It's Andrew here with 765 Disc Review. Today we're at McAllister Park, specifically the Washout Woods course here. So before we get started, I just want to give you guys a couple of local tips that might be helpful if you're coming out to try this course for the first time. Number one, bring bug spray. The mosquitoes can get really bad out here, especially in the summer months here. We actually are kind of in the middle of that right now, and I conveniently forgot to put it on before I'm out here, so I might be swatting some mosquitoes. The second thing here is if you actually start at hole 7, you will save yourself a ton of walking. So hole 1 is way down that way, hole 18 is even further, and then the parking lot is pretty much straight in front of me here if you kind of look backwards from hole 7. So if you start on hole 7, you actually finish on 6 over here, which is the closest basket to the parking lot. So definitely a place to check out for sure. So nonetheless, just wanted to make these videos here for anybody that has to play the course blind, or if you're coming to town and want to check out the course, thought it just might be helpful for you to have this video to check out. I know I've got 2 young girls at home, so I've started to have to play a lot of tournaments blind because I don't have the time that I used to get out and play those practice rounds. So nonetheless, hope you enjoy. Alright guys, so we're starting off on hole 7 here today. So I'll be playing the shorts for all of these here. So hole 7 is a 250-foot kind of dog leg to the left here. For backhand throwers, I think you'll find that it is going to be pretty kind of a basic straight to hyzer throw for you, with maybe a mid-range, maybe a fairway driver, maybe even a putter, depending on how far you throw. For somebody like me with a forehand throw, I can sometimes work a forehand turnover with like a leopard 3 is usually my go-to here. Although that's been kind of just getting me at like circle 2 at best. So what I'm actually going to try is what I used to do, which was a forehand roller on this hole. Honestly, that'll be fine. Gonna be a little short there. The grass is a little tall today, but overall should still be looking at a par at worst. Here's where I ended up, maybe edge of circle 2 at best, maybe even a little bit of circle 3 there, but nonetheless, we'll take a stab out of here. All right, next up is going to be hole 8. So there's not a T sign here, so I'll just have the screenshot from UDisc for you. But for hole 8, it's a par 4 with a dog leg to the right here. If you can see kind of all the way down past these few trees in the fairway there, it's kind of your landing zone for the first shot. So for this one here, backhanders, it'll be pretty forgiving because the mistake to make is to kind of go out to the left here, because that'll leave the gap open for you here. I'm going to be a little bit more aggressive here, throwing forehand with a Firebird, trying to put it kind of up into the gap there. So it can play out either way. It is a relatively challenging par 4, even if you place it in a pretty solid spot starting off here. It's still one you're going to have to earn with your second shot, which I'll show you in a bit as well. And that's going to be kind of the risk you run with throwing forehand here, is that you can get yourself pinched off a little bit. Par is definitely still going to be a possibility for me from where I'm going to be at here, but just kind of the downside of throwing forehand there. It's a little bit more of an aggressive play. All right, so my drive actually just landed a little bit short of the gap here, so I'm actually in a better position than I thought. So with this one here where I'm at, I'm realistically going to have to probably go forehand roller to break through the trees. So we'll see how that goes for us here. All right, so we got it out there. So we should be looking at maybe a circle 2 putt if I had to guess there. I didn't get it quite as rolled over as I would have liked to, but still a possibility there. So this here is kind of your view from your ideal landing zone. So from here you kind of have two lanes that you could throw, maybe a slight backhand with a putter or a flex forehand you could probably work through too. Roller's never a bad option here because it's really easy to hit some trees as well. But if you notice here, we are just past these kind of trees that you see in the fairway back from the tee pad. All right, guys, we're on to hole 9 now. So this is, if I recall correctly from UDisc here, this tee sign's incorrect. But this is around about 500 foot par 4. So kind of zigzags a little bit through the fairway. What you're likely going to want to do is land somewhere by this yellow kind of pole sticking out of the ground. That's what I would say is probably kind of your ideal first landing zone. If you don't get up to that area, it can be really tight. This is probably the hardest hole on the course, and I'll kind of show you as we move along the fairway. So I threw a flex eagle on this hole. So this is one here. If you looked at the tee sign there, which I'm not going to post a picture of because like I said, it's incorrect. It's from back when we had the short pin there. So I basically throw that same shot. It tries to get me in that similar area, puts me in the center of the fairway. Usually, depending on my shot, might line me up for a turning forehand there, or maybe even a forehand roller. So like I said, kind of just depends on how you want to play it here, but very tough hole nonetheless. So I had a pretty decent drive on this one. I made it a little bit past the yellow pole here. So for where I'm at, I would say a backhand thrower would be pretty happy there. I think you've got a chance to attack the pin. For myself here, I don't have too much of a forehand line, so what I'm going to go with to try to get it up here is another forehand roller with my Champion Eagle. That'll be pretty solid. I'll be putting from circle 1, probably a longer putt, but still putting from circle 1. It is an elevated basket, just something to keep in mind here for you as you get down the fairway in case you can't see it. All right, guys, so next up here we have hole 10. So hole 10 is 265 feet. It's a little bit of an elevated tee pad compared to where the pin is, so just keep that in mind. Might play a little bit shorter for you than 265. So the key is going to be on this hole, you want to make sure you get up to that line of trees before the basket and keep it in the fairway at least up to that point. So when it comes to these here, usually that's kind of what I'm aiming to do, and then kind of hoping to get lucky. I will say the forehand gap is a little bit more wide open, or maybe a backhand turning shot for people here. But like I said, as long as you get to that line of trees before the basket, you'll be in decent shape for par. And like I said, as far as birdie goes, you just want to kind of hope you can force your way through all the trees. Almost aced it. All right, next up is hole 11. So hole 11 is 280 feet here. I feel like it shapes up really nicely for a flex forehand shot. So if you look here, there's about 3, maybe 4, depending on if you're really counting that first one there. 3 trees that are really like directly kind of in the fairway, and ones you really have to get by if you want par. So starting off here, like I said, I usually like to aim for that center tree. If you notice the 3 kind of directly in the fairway. And I'll do that on a bit of Anheuser, hopefully flex it around and then land hopefully near the basket. It does look like there is a pretty sizable branch down compared to the last time I've been out here. So I'm sure that'll be moved by the time you get out here, hopefully. But nonetheless, that is the play for me. Backhanders, you could probably throw a pretty straight shot right at it with something pretty neutral or understable, and I think you'd be fine. I would hesitate to go out towards the right side of the gap there just because the ceiling's so low, and if you kick out off the fairway, it's really kind of a tough shot to save your par. So here we go with the Sexy Firebird. We'll see what we can do. And didn't get it flex enough, but hopefully we can still save par from right there. All right, so this is where my drive landed here. So one of the problems here with not clearing these 3 trees is that for your approach shot, you're really dealing with a tight window. Now we're dealing with a tighter window than usual because of the downed branch. But even without it, it's still a pretty low ceiling there. For me, with my approach shots, I really like to kind of stall them out, throw them up in the air a little bit. So causes a little bit of trouble for me. Not impossible, but definitely a little bit of trouble for sure. But like I said, if you can get out past these trees to somewhere where you can jump putt a little bit more open, you're usually in pretty good shape. That should be about perfect, maybe a little long, but I'll still have a putt to save par. All right, guys, so next up is hole 12 here. Hole 12 is a 650-foot par 5. So as you might be able to tell, there's kind of 2 lanes to go through. So there's the right lane that's a little bit more recommended. It's a little bit wider, I'd say a little bit easier to clear. And then you have the left-hand lane. This lane I really wouldn't recommend unless you're a forehand thrower, because if you get off onto the rough of that left lane on the left side of it, it gets really, really tough to get yourself back in play. So you definitely don't want to be on the left side of this fairway. It's really tough to get back in. The middle trees that kind of split the gap are a lot thinner than you might think. So you definitely still have a chance at kind of getting some distance on your next throw, even if you end up kind of in the center trees, or even if, like I may do when I throw forehand up here through the right-hand gap, even if you end up to the right side of the fairway over here, it's still relatively thin. So the definite mistake to make is either center or to the right if you've got to make one. So I'm going to throw a forehand leopard 3, just try to get it as far down the right-hand gap as I can, and then take it from there once we get up there. So I ended up right around here, hit one of the first trees kind of coming into the gap. So not amazing, but like I said, hopefully you can see a little bit here. It's actually pretty thin, kind of in the middle and over to the right. So there's definitely still chances for you to get out from here. I could possibly do a forehand kind of turning shot here. What I feel most comfortable with though is going to be a forehand roller. I know it can get me some distance up the fairway, be a relatively low risk shot, and still cut off some feet off the fairway. So that's usually my play once I get in here. Like I said, not really the end of the world. If you can get out of the woods in 2 shots, you're definitely looking at what should be a birdie chance for you. If you can at least get out in 3, you can possibly, I won't say probably, but you can probably still save, well, I just said it. You can possibly still save your par, depending on how far up you can push that 3rd shot. So I'm just going to try to chop as much distance off as I can with a forehand roller and see how it goes. All right, must be up there a little bit there. I think I mostly cleared the trees, but we'll see when I walk up there because I didn't quite see where it stopped. All right, so you can see my lie made it out of the woods here. So I'm sitting 2, getting ready to throw 3. You may be able to see the basket kind of up here a little bit and to the left there, just in kind of that next line of trees. So it is there. Like I said, it's definitely attackable from where I'm at. Maybe a bit of a long shot for me. It really calls for a backhand once you get out here to kind of cut into the basket there with my forehand throw, I'm gonna have to kind of somehow plinko it through some trees on a decent shot to really park it. So we'll see how this goes. I've got the Leopard 3 here, just gonna try to throw a little hyzer flip shot there and see how it works out for me. And I'll be putting from there, maybe circle one edge, maybe circle two, kind of depends on how we end up once we get there, but we'll at least be putting for birdie, even with not the greatest tee shots. So that's just one thing to keep in mind on this one here. If you don't have the greatest tee shot, you can definitely still get par or even birdie. All right, so next up we've got the fairway of hole 13. So hole 13 is 315 feet. So pretty open fairway there with kind of a slight dog leg to the right. So this really lines up quite nicely, I would say, for forehand players. Backhand players, you're going to want more of a slightly kind of a gentle turning shot to get there. So I'm going to be throwing the Sexton Firebird here and see if we can't get up there. That should be maybe parked. We'll see. All right, guys, so we're on hole 14 here. It's 225 feet. There's really two ways that you can take it. So there's kind of for backhanders, there's kind of a strong turning route there over to the left. And then you've got maybe more of a straight slash kind of flex shot over to the right. Neither one's a bad option. For forehand players there, they're gonna like the left-hand gap, I would say. And that's usually what I was trying to hit a lot of times when I'm trying to hit the ace run. But with a tournament coming up over here, actually a couple, I'm probably gonna be throwing a forehand roller here. It's just one of those ones where I might end up with a long putt, but I usually end up with a putt. So I'll usually take that over an ace run where I might be risking kind of a challenging par on a 225-foot hole. So. So as you can see, we'll be putting from circle one up there. That wasn't my best kind of what I was aiming for. I was really kind of aiming to go down the left gap, but hard to argue with a putt. This is definitely one, if you have the arm for it, I recommend standstill because it's really easy, especially for backhand players, to hit these trees on the right and end up really struggling for par. It's just not a terribly long hole, so if it's one you feel like you can get to at the standstill, matter of fact, several of these holes out here, I'd really recommend it. Just to kind of maintain your accuracy. That's one of the important things out on this course here, is making it in the fairway. Even if you don't make it very far up, usually if you're in the fairway, you've still got a pretty good chance at saving par. If you're off the fairway, it gets really hard to save your par. All right, so this is hole 15. It is 270 feet. So we've got a dog leg right here. You've got a couple of options. I would say the least risky option is to go forehand kind of out wide and try to crash it in through that line of trees there. If you're a big backhand player, you'll see that there's a backhand turnover shot kind of to the right of the tree in the center of the fairway. So it's definitely there as well. I'd say it's a little bit more risky of a play because you have a little bit greater of a chance of hitting one of those trees early and having kind of a tough approach to save par, but definitely there nonetheless. I'm going to be throwing my Firebird forehand and we'll see how it goes. So as you can see, one of the dangers here of that tree in the center is it kind of makes for a low ceiling if you want to be kind of more aggressive and try to get towards the basket with the forehand. There is a little bit wider of a play there. That can still put you in maybe circle one edge, maybe even circle two. It's a little bit more conservative if you kind of take it up high and left of the tree. I was just trying to go underneath it there. and sometimes you get burned much more than I did. So I still pushed up a decent amount there, so should hopefully have a jump putt, but nonetheless, just something to be aware of as you throw. All right, guys, up next is hole 16. It's 210 feet. With this hole, you've really got two options. Neither one would I say is any better or worse than the other. So the hole, or the gap that I'm going to go through, is this one kind of towards the left there. So I'm going to go forehand with his Crystal Flex Zone, pretty flippy, to try to go straight at it. This is actually the only ace I've got on this course here, was on this hole. The backhand hyzer is definitely there as well. There is a little tree kind of in the middle of the fairway, but it's not impossible to miss, so I think both are definitely fair options. If you have a nice flippy disc for backhand as well, you can go right up the gut as well. I remember back when I was throwing a Comet, I feel like I used to be able to lace that line pretty consistently. So nonetheless, I'm going to head pretty much hopefully straight at it here. Not a ton of danger. There is some OB over to the right, but it's really hard to get to. It's that walking path over there. So it's not really something that people are going to hit super frequently. There's not a whole lot of OB on this course. It's kind of hard to get to if you do. So let's see how it goes. Almost like I've aced it before. All right, next up we've got hole 17. It's a 580-foot par 4. So this one you really do have to take in kind of two steps here. So from your tee shot here, the first thing that I probably should mention here, and you'll notice this if you don't listen or if you don't watch this video here before playing at some point here, but this tee pad on the short tee pad of 17 here is actually a little bit shorter than the rest. So you might want to test it out before you do your drive. I'd probably recommend starting in the dirt just a little bit. It's not really all that much shorter, but something you might find yourself kind of going over the edge of the tee pad there if you don't think about that going into your shot. So that's definitely something to consider. For me here, if you see there's kind of like 3 dead trees up straight ahead, sorry, at the edge of the fairway, that's kind of what I'm aiming for. And then anything past these kind of 2 trees over to the right, not this first one here, but up there, should be about fine. I think this lines up nicely for a long forehand if you've got it. You can kind of cut some of the feet off the fairway. Backhanders, it's not a bad thing to go up there and be straight. As long as you're in the fairway, you should still have a shot at attacking the pin. So like I said, true par 4 here. We'll show you what the second shot looks like. Hopefully the second shot's down the fairway quite a bit. I'm going to throw a forehand with the Latitude 64 ride. All right, shank that, but not a bad spot to be here, because then I get to kind of show you here what to do when you get up there, because that first kind of tree straight and maybe to the left a little bit is where a lot of people are going to land if you do happen to shank. All right, so this is about where I landed. Par is still salvageable from here, but it's going to take 2 pretty good shots for me to get there. So you might be able to kind of see up here the pin just a little bit to the right there. So it's a pretty guarded green. So for where I'm going to be aiming for right now, I'm just going to try to push it up, have something that maybe fades in a bit, but probably don't want something that fades in too much, because it's a really well guarded green and there's really only one clean entrance to it that I'll show you hopefully when I get up there. All right, so here's where my third shot landed. So this is a green I was talking about. Like I said, a little bit guarded here. Really one and only one lane for you to hit. So I've got this to hopefully get it up there for my third shot and be able to save my par. Obviously, if you don't hit the line, it gets to be a very challenging putt. So we got the K1 Softberg here, and we'll see if I can't put it up there. Missed the line, but we got it up there. We should have a putt, hopefully to save our par. We'll see if we can make that or not. I haven't been putting great today. All right, so we're on hole 18 here. So this hole is 420 feet. It's a par 4. The integral thing is that you get out of the woods here on your first shot if you want to have a look at birdie. It's still very parable if you hit something early and get out on your second shot, but definitely something you want to make it out of the woods on your first shot. So for backhanders, I think this is just a pretty standard kind of hyzer there. Forehanders, there's a little hyzer flip. I shouldn't say hyzer flip, hyzer flex there. Let me backtrack. Forehanders, you're going to want to do a little flex shot there. For me personally, as you've probably seen me do a few times on this course, I'm going to go with a forehand roller. This course has really kind of taught me forehand rollers because you just end up in a spot so often where the forehand roller is a little bit lower of a risk of a play. You might not, be able to nail it perfectly because of kind of unpredictable things that you might hit on the ground. But it definitely, for me at least, kind of seems to up my chances of hitting the line I want to hit, especially when it's really tight and there's kind of a high penalty for not hitting it. So I'm going to throw a forehand roller, just try to get it up and out there onto the fairway, and then hopefully have a shot for birdie from there. So like I said, that'll get me out there. I'll definitely have a chance at a birdie from there because like I said, anything outside of the woods there is pretty wide open up until you get to the pin. There's kind of some trees that guard it, but should definitely get me a chance as we go along. All right guys, so here's where my drive landed, maybe like 60 feet or so outside of kind of that wooded gap area. So I'm just going to try forehand kind of anhyzer shot to get it in there. Like I said, as long as you kind of get it up there, you should still be able to get par pretty easy. One thing to note currently, depending on how soon you watch this video, there is some sort of like bee or hornet's nest or whatever up in the ground there just short of the pin. So hopefully I can push it out of that way for sure. But it's definitely there. So if you watch this video somewhat recently, hopefully it's not there by the time you get here, but just something to keep in mind there that you might want to kind of miss over to the right if you want to avoid those bees. Something to look out for if you do happen to see them. That's all right. Should be a circle 2 putt. Not amazing, but we're up there. All right guys, so this is hole 1, so it's 255 feet, par 3. If I haven't been mentioning that they weren't par 3s, they probably were. So you've got 2 gaps that you can hit here. So there's one to the right. Backhanders might prefer that there to relatively straight. It is narrow, but a straight, maybe a slight kind of flip up to flat and just let it ride there. So you've got that there. You also have a gap over to the left here. That gap is definitely forehand friendly, especially here. You're going to see me throw an eagle. If I can hit it right, you can see a nice skip there. The dirt up there is pretty packed, so you tend to get a really nice skip if you kind of throw it a little bit lower and flat. So personally, I prefer the left-hand gap because I feel like it's a little bit bigger than the right-hand gap. But the key for this hole, you definitely want to get it up past the first tree in the fairway at least. Usually from there, if you're in the fairway, you still have some sort of putt to save par. But if you get knocked off the fairway, this can be a really challenging hole to save your par. So a little too much hyzer on that one, but you can probably see the skip that I was talking about there. It's a pretty big skip that was there, but should be putting maybe circle 2, maybe circle 1 for the birdie. All right guys, so we're now on hole 2. So hole 2 is 260 feet, par 3 here. With this one here, I think this lines up really nicely for a backhander. I think a lot of people will be able to reach it with a mid-range there. Really kind of a stock, kind of light hyzer or straight shot backhand. For me, that's not really something that I hit super consistently here. I had been trying to kind of do a turning forehand with my flippy zone there. And sometimes it worked out, and sometimes I would like shank it and be having to scramble on what really shouldn't be that hard of a par 3. So I'm going to go back to my original shot, which is the roller here. One of those, like I said on a couple other shots, you know, it's one of those I know I can get it up there. It's not always a perfect, you know, parked putt, but at least it's up there, and usually will end up being an easy par at the worst. So here goes. Well, grass is really, really high today, which is a problem with rollers because that got eaten up quick. Still in the fairway, so hopefully still save that par. All right, well, next up we got hole 3. So this is 230 feet here. You've really got two options here. You've got two lines you can hit. So one, you can go right at it here. I think this would be a pretty successful line for backhand throwers. A little bit low risk as well, because if you fade out there, you're fading into some trees that should keep you in the fairway a little bit. For forehand throwers like me, I'm going to take the left-hand gap and try to kind of skip back towards the basket. It might be a little hard to see the basket, but it's kind of maybe like 50, 60 feet in front of that truck. So I'm going to go with I want to say it was last year's Halo Star Barsby Eagle. These things are nice and beefy. You can probably get a little bit of skip out of it. I'm not going to say easy par because I just bogeyed the last one there after my roller that I thought would give me an easy par. So I think the last 2 times I've done that, I bogeyed. So I better shut up with that and learn my lesson, I guess. But here goes hole 3. Should be putting from circle 1. I don't think I got the skip I wanted, but should still be a makeable putt. All right, next up we got hole 4, or sorry, hole 4. So it's 510 foot par 4. So your first shot, what you want to do is, if you can kind of see the yellow pole sticking out up in the right of the fairway, you want to get it about that deep or deeper if you can. It's definitely more advantageous to be on the left side of the fairway. So this is a dog leg to the right. So if you get up to that pole and to the left of it there, it usually opens up a pretty nice forehand approach look for birdie. This is a hole you definitely want to keep it on the fairway, though. It can get really challenging if you get off the fairway. You can end up just having to chip it out because you can just end up with really no line with how dense these trees are on either side of the fairway. So I'm going to be throwing a Halo Sidewinder here, just hopefully put it up there, maybe a little bit to the left, and deal with what we've got after that. Sorry, had to get a stop here. Already shanked one from stepping on a shoelace. So here we go. All right, depending on how deep I went in, I may or may not have a step out to still attack for a birdie. But we pushed it down enough there. I don't think we went crazy deep in. So we should still hopefully be looking at a par. Well, much to my surprise, I actually somehow popped out onto the fairway. So that was a bit of luck. So the area over here is a little uneven, so that's going to be a little bit tough. But definitely with a good shot here, still have a chance at birdie. I was going to throw the Nate Sexton Firebird, but I'm feeling like I might need a little bit more distance, so I might actually go with the Grace for this shot. Not quite as overstable, but I can hopefully hyzer it in there a little bit there. I'm afraid with this uneven ground, I'm not going to be able to quite get what I want on my Sexton Firebird. So let's see what we can do with the Grace. And that will hopefully be pretty good if I don't get knocked. Oh, I think I almost skipped in the basket. So should hopefully be looking at a birdie from there. Wow. All right, up next is hole 5. It's a 225-foot par 3. Really, two ways to go about it. So you kind of have a tree in the middle of the fairway. It's not super close though, so it doesn't feel like one of those where it's like in your head the whole time. So for backhanders, you probably want to go with like maybe a flex shot of sorts on the left side of that tree. You might even be able to go kind of straight at it with more of a slightly understable disc there that just kind of holds a turn, or maybe is mostly flat there. You also, I suppose, for backhanders have the right gap too, although I think it may be tough and kind of putting yourself in a little bit more danger than you need to go that way. With how the fairway kind of curves in before the basket, it might be kind of tough to reach the basket here. Forehand, I think the left gap is a little too tight for me for how I need to shape the shot. So what I like to do is I go right hand gap with kind of a flex shot here with my get freaky zone. And that one was mega overturned there. I didn't really trust that disc. I kind of stabled up because of the wind, but still up there, probably circle 2 for par, so nothing too. All right, guys, so this is hole 6 here, our last hole today. So it's a par 4, 425 feet here. So as you can see, it is pretty open at first here. And then once you kind of get past those yellow poles, here is where it really starts to narrow in. So you kind of have a couple of different ways you can play it off the tee. One, you can do what I'm probably going to try to do right now, which is just to lay it up to the entrance, maybe just a little bit past the yellow poles and off to the right, hopefully. You can also try to be aggressive and try to pump it down there a little bit. But the problem with that is if you pump it down here, the way that that fairway narrows in, it's really unlikely that your shot ends up on the fairway. So you might be kind of forced to do a shot that you don't necessarily like there. Kind of just depends on where you're at and how aggressive you are feeling. For me personally, I feel like my forehand roller is decent enough that I feel like trying to penetrate really isn't all that bad, but I haven't really been hitting it with much accuracy lately, so I'm going to try to go a little bit shorter here and see how it pans out with the get freaky zone. All right, so shorter than I would like, but the benefit of laying up like that here is even if you go a little short, your gap is still going to be open to attack the basket here. Whereas if you kind of go long and miss the line and miss that gap there, it can be really difficult to have a line towards the basket. So like I said, not quite as long as I would like. I'd maybe like to be 20 feet further, but still going to be workable, I think, for a chance at birdie. Might not be a high percentage chance, but a chance nonetheless. All right, so I'm just right over here. So like I said, not completely out of a birdie chance here, but it's not looking amazing either. So what I'm gonna go for here is a flex forehand with the old Color Glow Barsby Eagle. It's a little bit kind of in the middle, my more neutral eagle probably here. And just see if I can't put it up there a bit. Maybe I'll get lucky and kind of really make it all the way through. So I didn't get as much ante on it as I would have liked there, but I should be about pin high, probably a circle 2 look for birdie. So like I said, even if you put it short, you're not necessarily out of it, and it's not bad to be a little bit further back because sometimes that opens up your line here, even if you're not right in front of the gap. So not terrible. We'll see how it plays out though. All right, guys, just finished up here on hole 6. So like I said, this is the closest basket to the parking lot, so you should be pretty close if you started over on 7 here. So did put the second throw in circle 1, but it was a little deep in circle 1, didn't end up making the putt and settled for a par. So for the round today, I ended up 3 under overall, so not terrible, but not amazing here. Nothing that I feel super bad about, but definitely plenty that I could have cleaned up. So nonetheless, thanks for watching, guys. Here, one thing you may have noticed here is if you look behind me, we've got the sleeves in the ground here. So starting, I believe, tomorrow, these baskets are actually going to be pulled. And shortly after that, we're going to be working on getting some new baskets in. So if you're somebody that's kind of avoided this course because it's got Mach 2s, I completely understand. We should have some new baskets coming in here very shortly. So if you've got a tournament coming up, best of luck to you. I hope this helped a little bit, like so many other people's YouTube videos have helped me as I go into playing a course blind. So hopefully I can pay that forward a little bit for some people as well. So thanks to the sponsors, Disc Store. If you haven't checked them out for all your disc golf needs, please do. And Flight Towel as well. If you do check them out, use code 128719 for a little discount there. And that helps support me a little bit as well. So appreciate you watching. Thanks so much. Have a great one. We'll see you.